So we left off in part two with the discussion getting more heated between Ceylon and Borlas. We barely got another page into it. But it's important to understand what's going on here. This is a dialogue of, this is what writers do, a dialogue between Tolkien himself in his mind, but posing the generation, that the people and the youngsters of his time that he was talking to and interacting with, and posing what he was hearing them say to him, and working out the discussion, because it is a meaningful and necessary discussion to have to understand what we're up against and where he gets to his conclusion at the end and why he couldn't continue to write, right? Now Tolkien is getting, so Ceylon made his argument that men are no better than orcs, because whether you pick the fruit when it's ripe or whether you pick the fruit to I guess throw it away, or if you pick it before it ripens, what's the difference? What's the difference? And on top of that, I'm not even talking about picking the fruit. I'm talking about cutting the tree down. Do we even have the right to cut the tree down? And who are we? How are we any better than orcs if we cut the tree down? Even if we need it for fire and we need it for timber. And now Tolkien gets to the spiritual argument, the Christian argument, which he did more than he ever did in Lord of the Rings, I feel, and which is the crux in all of this, and shows how the generations to come were already disparaging Christianity, were turning to, I guess, a more satanic route, which is ultimately what he's saying here when he says, but trees are not judges. Trees, any more than an animal, right? An animal is not a judge. An animal is not the judge of you. We have been designated the masters of the world. Masters in the sense of, you know, we are here to tend it. We are here to use it for what we need by the one, right? By God. You did not. You spoke of the judgment of trees in these matters, but trees are not judges. The children of the one are the masters. My judgment as one of them you know already. The evils of the world were not at first in the great theme, but entered with the discords of Melkor. So we're going back to creation with that. If you know anything about Tolkien's creationism, he wrote the Ainulindale, I'm probably saying that wrong, in the Silmarillion, which is a poetic way of representing creation as the composition of a symphony, where Ilúvatar, the one, God, let's say, is the composer, is the Beethoven, and he's also conducting it and guiding, and the Maiar and the Valar are the different instruments, basically the different players in the orchestra. You know, you got the oboe player, you got your trumpets, you got your saxophone, you've got your percussion, you've got your strings, your violins, your whatever, your cello, everything. Everybody had a role in the creation as part of the symphony, which is poetic and true. And Melkor is the one that introduced a new theme, where it's like Beethoven is conducting his symphony, and one of the players in the orchestra decides, one of the musicians says, well, I want to change this note. Wait, I want to change, you know, a whole bar. Oh wait, I want to add a whole little embellishment into it. It's like, wait a minute though. That's something we should be discussing in the composition, not what we're trying to play the symphony. You can't just go off the rails. You throw the whole thing off. And that's what Melkor did, and that's another poetic way of saying that in doing so, Melkor introduced the things that are uneven in the world, the things that lead to decay, that lead to blight, the sense of blight, the sense of perversion of something that was already made with a certain forethought. Man did not come with these discords. They entered afterwards as a new thing direct from Eru, the One, and therefore they are called his children. And all that was in the theme they have for their own good, the right to use rightly, without pride or wantonness, but with reverence. What a way to succinctly make the point, right? What a way, but it's a very spiritual, I don't want to use the word religious because I have my own opinion about religion, but it's definitely a spiritual viewpoint and a Christian one to say that the one God created the children in his image. They are not necessarily born with the blight that is in the world because of Melkor. And because of that, they are blessed and they have been given the right to do what they have to do with what is in the world. But they don't do it out of being proud and out of hubris. They do it with respect for what they are doing, with reverence for what they need to do, right? As long as you are cutting down the tree and saying, thank you, tree, for my... It's like a whole concept, it's the whole Christian concept of, thank you, God, for my daily bread. Thank you, Lord, for my daily bread, you know? You do it that way, it's different than when you just take what you want, you know? I'm taking what I want to have. Because I can, because I have the power to do so, right? There's a difference in the motive means something to Tolkien, right? The way that we conduct ourselves means something to Tolkien. He does have a note here that we can read real quick. He says there's a different version of that part of the discussion. I guess at a different manuscript or a different wherever he wrote it, I suppose. And that's a man, said Borlas, who tends a tree and guards it from blights and eats its fruits, which it produces more abundantly than its mere life need. Not that eating the fruit need destroy the seed, does not act like a canker, nor like an orc. But as for the cankers, I wonder, they live, it might be said, and yet their life is death. I do not believe that they were part of the music of the Ainur, unless in the discords of Melkor, and so with orcs. And what of men? Why do you ask? Said Borlas. You know surely what is taught. They were not at first in the great music, but they did not enter with the discords of Melkor. They came from Ilúvatar himself, and therefore they are called the children of God, and all that is in the music they have a right to use rightly, which is with reverence, not with pride or wantonness. So it's pretty much making the same point. It seems like an earlier draft of it. So Borlas continues, if the smallest child of a woodman feels the cold of winter, the proudest tree is not wronged. If it is bidden to surrender its flesh to warm the child with fire, but the child must not mar the tree in play or spite, rip its bark or break its branches. And the good husbandman will use first, if he can, dead wood or an old tree. He will not fell a young tree and leave it to rot, for no better reason than his pleasure in axe play. That is orcish. But it is, even as I said, the roots of evil lie deep, and from far off comes the poison that works in us, so that many do these things at times, and become then indeed like the servants of Melkor. But the orcs did these things at all times. They did harm with delight to all things that could suffer it, and they were restrained only by lack of power, not by either prudence or mercy. But we have spoken enough of this. So Borlas has made his point. He's done discussing it. There's nothing else to say. That is the trump card, as it were. The fact that we were made by the one, we have been given jurisdiction to do things, but not out of spite, not out of wanting to hurt, but out of need, necessity, and always keeping in mind of the whole process of nature. Don't cut down the young tree when you have an old tree, or when you have dead wood that you could use instead. But Ceylon is not done. Of course not, right? Do these people ever shut up? No. Why? said Ceylon. "We have hardly begun. It was not of your orchard, nor your apples, nor of me that you were thinking when you spoke of the re-arising of the dark tree. What you were thinking of, Master Borlas, I can guess nonetheless. I have eyes and ears and other senses, Master." His voice sank low and could scarcely be heard above the murmur of a sudden chill wind in the leaves as the sun sank behind Mindoluin. "You have heard, then, of the name?" With hardly more than breath he formed it. "Of Herumor." So now we're getting into a little bit of where this is going to lead as far as the actual story, the plot, that there's a satanic cult at work secretly now in Gondor, that Ceylon may or may not be a part of, right? There is a note about the name Herumor that's mentioned now. It is found in the Silmarillion of the Rings of Power in the Third Age, page 293, as that of a renegade Númenorian who became powerful among the Haradrim in the time before the War of the Last Alliance. So I guess there is a note of an actual Herumor in the Silmarillion, in the canon, that this guy existed. He was Númenorian, and he, in the Second Age, went to Harad, became a leader in Harad, possibly in Nazgul at some point, maybe. I'm just guessing there. And this was before the last alliance that we know closes the Second Age. So there's a Herumor who existed. Perhaps he is the same one mentioned here. Perhaps he is merely just, the name is meant to evoke that persona and what that persona did and what kind of a person we're dealing with. Borlas looked at him with amazement and fear. His mouth made tremulous motions of speech, but no sound came from it. So Ceylon is saying, okay, let's cut the crap here. This isn't about you and I. And this isn't about the damn tree. This isn't about whatever happened when I was young. This is because you've heard something about what's going on, haven't you? And maybe I know what you're talking about. Maybe we should talk about it openly. Which is the case with these types, right? I mean, I don't want to bring up anything that's concurrent, but you can pretty much think of what are these youth groups that are acting and destroying things and burning things in the name of righteousness, in the name of what they feel they've been wronged, right? But they accomplish nothing but destruction, but they feel they are justified in doing it. This is kind of what this is feeling like, right? Ceylon says, "I see that you have, and you seem astonished to learn that I have heard it also, but you are not more astonished than I was to see that this name has reached you. For as I say, I have keen eyes and ears, but yours are now dim, even for daily use, and the matter has been kept as secret as cunning could contrive." So he's like, I said that to see how you would react, and you have heard about it, and old-timers like you should know about what's going on with us. I'm a young guy. I may or may not be involved in it. I know what's hip in nowadays and what the youth are doing. You shouldn't know what we're up to. So let's get down to it, right? Borla says, "Who's cunning?" suddenly and fiercely. The sight of his eyes might be dim, but they blazed now with anger.